How's everyone doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 102. Today, my special guest is Travis Chance from the legendary Indiana hardcore band Usurp Synapse, one of my favorite bands of all time. Just love that band. It's like a thrill to talk to Travis. So pumped. And he played in Fax Arcana. He dabbled in a few other projects. We're going to get into that as well. Just super stoked to get to talk to him. Hope everybody's good. Allergy season is fucking killing me in New England. But, do what you can. My eyes feel like they're burning inside, you know what I mean? But, yeah, super stoked. And, this will probably be my last talk for a long while. Started with a drummer, I'm ending with a drummer. I had 2 lost episodes, Dimitri from Dillinger Escape Plan and Kathleen from Circle Takes a Square. I'm going to try to get those back, do a second run with them, maybe late fall. That'll be fun, if they're willing. I mean, I think they are, because I talk to them here and there. But yeah, it's been a ride, 2.5 years, almost 3 years doing this. I just need a break. I love hardcore, I love screamo, I love, death metal, I love it all. So, I'm definitely gonna be dabbling in something, but this will be, my last talk for a while. So we're just waiting on Travis. He's never done one of these, so might have to wait a couple minutes, but so yeah, coming from a dirty parking lot in New Hampshire. It's about to rain. Hopefully the cops don't bother me. Dan, what's good? Here we go. Sending it to you right now, Travis.
If this works.
Well, hello.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Just a boring Saturday afternoon here in Tampa.
Nice. I want to thank you so much for taking time out to do this. I know we were trying to get things going, and I went to Florida for a little while, and you were busy and stuff like that. But I just want to thank you so much for taking time out and chatting with me, especially about the old times and Usurp and stuff like that, which was very special time for me. And Usurp is one of my favorite bands of all time. So it's just a pleasure, and thank you again.
Wow. Well, thank you for caring about weird stuff I did when I was a much younger person. So that's a big deal to me. My life is so different. I mean, there's elements of that are still relevant to my life, but I feel like that was just a billion years ago. It probably was, actually. The 90s was almost a billion years ago.
Yeah. It doesn't seem that long ago, but when you look back, it is quite a while back then. But it seemed like I just saw you guys at that fest in New Bedford. So you know what I mean? Time's a weird thing. So
yeah, that I remember that show very well. It's funny you posted that video that you posted is a song we wrote that we never recorded. It's like one of the only songs we wrote that we never put down.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's out there then.
Yeah, we did that discography, and I don't know why I don't know if that song died on the cutting room floor or what it was, but I mean, it was all a bunch of unintelligible nonsense to begin with. So.
Now, do you ever feel like nowadays that urge to play, that style of music again? Do you ever get that itch to go back and play some spastic?
Yeah.
Hardcore?
I was talking to Jeff Howe about this. I bumped into him. My girlfriend and I we went to like an outdoor flea market in St. Petersburg. I'm over in Tampa, and we bumped. And I just had this feeling when I walked in there. I was like, this place feels like it would sell vegan hot dogs. And I'm like, I wonder if Jeff's here. And sure enough, Jeff and his wife were there. And I talked to him. I was like, because I still have a kid, and me and Antonio Lario and Brian Wyrick from Conjurer and Mara Kate and John Scott from Usurp, we started doing a little thing called Website. Like, it's just like an old joke, like for a name for a band.
Yeah.
We always joked, because Usurp Synapse just sounds like what like 12-year-old nerdy boy would think would be cool. Like, the words don't have any connection. It's just nonsense. It's just two less common words being smushed together. So we always laughed at the idea of doing like a band called Receipts or Website, or we used to say Weekend was another one that was funny, but someone obviously beat us to the punch with that.
Yeah.
And we were sending each other stuff back, scratch tracks back and forth. And then I moved from Indiana down here, and everything just kind of stopped. But Don, my really good friend Don, who was, you know, the guitar player and kind of my main partner in crime in life for most of my life, he did a Usurp album by himself called Adult Adoption, The Usurp Synapse.
Yeah.
And we talked about doing stuff, and it's just, I mean, I make board games now. So I mean, like, this is my dining room table, like you can like set up for when we're done, so I can geek out with my partner. And I still love hardcore music. I still have the ability to, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Like, you listen to it and it's like a normal human being, it's very hard. And some of those records, like we recorded, the recordings are terrible. They're like 4-track recordings, and those songs are, the Usurp songs are really complex. It's very like Erebon Radar-y, noisy kind of stuff, but there's a lot going on in those songs that gets lost in that kind of poor recording process. But to answer your question, sorry, I'm meandering. I mean, I talked to Jeff. I said, hey, I play bass and I play drums. Our daughters are musical, so like we'll kind of mess around. I mean, I started my day off this morning. My girlfriend turned on, she just kept picking songs. I started playing Pony by Genuine on bass just randomly. I just for some reason thought of it and started playing it, and then she just was going on Spotify finding songs, and there were, of course, like, you know, Mr. Jones by the Counting Crows and like weird stuff. There was like a BB King song, and I mean, I love music. It's not, my problem is when I do something that's like all consuming for me, and as a 45-year-old dad, I don't know that, you know, touring and stuff, like, it's cool what Drome's Dream is doing these days, but I don't know. I would want to do that, and I don't know that I could do that.
Yeah. But what about the, like, say the capacity of kind of like what Seisha's doing? They're not like really making new music. They're kind of just doing one-offs here and there. Is that something that could possibly be in the future for Usurp? I think it would be like big if that ever did happen.
I mean, I would love to do it. It's the question is, how do you get a bunch of guys who live all over the place? I mean, Antonio is, you know, Antonio's kind of like you. He's like a culture curator, which is amazing. Like, the fact that you have all these flyers and videos and stuff. I was talking, I mean, you're effectively like a punk rock historian, and Antonio's like that too. He's kept all this stuff. Our teenage daughters got into records, and I pulled out my records, and I had stuff in there that, you know, like VSS 7 inches and stuff I forgot that I even had. And I would, yeah. So anyone out there who wants to start a, you know, hardcore band with an old dude that makes board games with a really bad name, you know, like a band name like Coupon, like, I would be down to do that. Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it's so weird. That was my whole life, was just playing music. From the time I started playing music when I was 15, I moved to Kentucky. I moved in with my dad's sister, and she had 2 boys that were close to my age. One played guitar, one played bass. So I learned the drums. And then I was like super into indie rock. Like, you know, I always liked like Pavement and Archers of Loaf and stuff like that. And then I went on a trip to the Holocaust Museum in high school in Orlando, and the kid who sat next to me on the bus was Joe Camacho from Reversal Man, their original guitar player. And he was wearing like, and I knew about like Victory Records and stuff, like Strife, and I was just like, this stuff is terrible. And then he like told me about Frail, and then he started talking to me, and it was funny because they were on the market for a bass player, and then Jeff asked, and I asked the day after Jeff asked. I'm like, oh, we're already going to try this guy Jeff out. And I think Jeff was in a band called Adversary or something back then. And I just got into hardcore music, and then that was it. I mean, I like stuff like Quicksand and Helmet, like, so those were kind of adjacent, you know, more mainstreamy type bands, but I really like that type of stuff. So, and then I started getting into, and I was very just like snobby, and I wanted to be misunderstood. So like I got into like the most obnoxious, unlistenable crap you could think of. And then like when bands like Airborne Radar and like Lightning Bolt and bands like that started coming out, I was like, this is, you know, there are elements of that in Usurp.
Yeah.
Like real crazy high pitched guitars and stuff like that. And like the songs don't have like traditional verse chorus or anything. It's just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like just kind of linear with new part introduced. So we kind of, yeah, like we were kind of trying to do like an artsy hardcore band, but I don't know, like, and then Usurp broke up, which was, I don't think any of us were expecting. And then we kind of broke up right when things were like going cool. And then I ended up moving to New York City, and I ended up being a session drummer for like Columbia and Sony. I played in like a really bad Canadian snowboarders hip hop band, his live band. On Def Jam, and I just kind of became a sellout, and like I never had a band ever again. I just played in other people's bands, and it was cool. Like I made money, I got to tour. I toured for 8 months. I played for a band that opened for the Buzzcocks for like 3 months.
Yeah.
I met Elton John. You know, cool stuff happened, but it wasn't as cool as playing to 20 kids with black hair dye, you know, with ill-fitting t-shirts. That was a much better time.
Did you have a stint in the Boredoms?
No.
No?
I would have loved that, though.
It's weird. I think I had read on Wikipedia that you had like a stint with the Boredoms. That's why I wanted to ask that, because I read that and I was like, what? I was like,
no, maybe Dawn might have. I know a buddy of mine messed around with the Boredoms. I mean, I've done some weird stuff. Like I did this thing in Brooklyn once where they had like 88 drummers play for 88 minutes on 080808.
Yeah.
And John Wiki, is that who's the discordant saxophone drummer? What's his name? John Whitty.
I know who you're talking about. Something like that.
Yeah, he was like 2 drummers down from me, and I was like freaking out because they're like one of my favorite bands. But yeah. I mean I play, dude, I went from Usurp to like, I like literally like at one point like Jessica Simpson's music manager was trying to put together like an edgy boy dance punk band. And because I had a rat tail, I got picked. It was like, it didn't matter if you were good or not. So, and then the more I was like trying to do career drumming for other people, like I kind of like lost my way. And when I blew out my shoulder, I had a really bad rotator cuff injury, and then I just stopped playing. And then I got into making board games somehow. And that's just been my life for the last 13 years.
Yeah.
So.
Nice. So I wanted to ask you too about Rep Secchi. Did you have an involvement in that project as well?
Yeah. Rep Secchi was, me and Don were friends with this guy, Josh Bonatti. And Josh Bonatti played in like Big A, Little A. He's a mastering guy. He's like one of the biggest mastering guys now. He's like one of the only guys who owns like record lathes in the country. And and then our buddy Mike, and Mike was this son of a composer, Mike Dixon, and he was just this wild guy. He played in like Rapider Than Horsepower with like the guys from Race Bannon, and we recorded some stuff. We recorded an album where he sang. He was a Mormon, and his mission was in Japan, and so he was a Japanese translator. So and Josh also lived and worked in Japan, so they both knew Japanese. So we recorded a Japanese record, but for an American audience, and it was like weird indie rock, but like kind of like Usurp, where the parts made no sense. Like 1 second we'd be doing jazz, the next second it would sound like David Bowie, and then it would be like country music, and it was kind of like you were turning a radio dial. Was the idea of the album. Earth Burglar, that's the name of the record.
Mike played a little bit in Usurp, didn't he? Playing
Yeah,
keyboards?
he played keyboard. Usurp just kept growing. Like, I don't even remember how many people. I think there were 8 of us at the end. Like, it was,
Yeah.
like when we met Antonio, he was in State Secedes, and we just got along with him very well. And then he said he'd drive us on tour. And then like one show, we're just like, dude, you ought to just scream. He's like, well, I don't know your songs, but who cares? Like, no one knows. Like, just scream. And then he ended up moving to Indy and being in the band. And like, I feel bad because he moved and then things kind of took a turn. And I was a bit of a tyrant in the band. I was kind of like the guy who booked the shows and you know, dealt with the record labels and stuff, which isn't saying much back then because it was just like other punk rock kids. We were like really good friends with like Witching Hour, you know, so I think we're like one of the bands that had the most records on Witching Hour at the time. Mm-hmm. But Antonio's a great guy. He's really he's one of the funniest human beings I've ever met in my life. I mean, genuinely funny person. And he was, I feel like that tour that we did where he drove, or we went on with Jerome's Dream, that was like probably the coolest month of my life, like of my young life. That was a really, really fun, awesome, meaningful experience. Yeah,
Pick Your Poison tour. That lineup was insane. You guys, Race Band and Jerome's Dream. I mean, what a dream show for people that listen to that type of music. I mean, I'm bummed out because I never got to see Race Band. I got to see Usurp once, and I saw Jerome's Dream a handful of times, only probably because they were from Connecticut and from the Boston area. So, but I never got to see Race Band, and I got to talk with James a while back on one of these episodes, and it was great for me because Race Bannon is up there on my list too. But
they're incredible live. Mike from Race Bannon is like one of the best frontmen. He's like I don't know, he's like this Frank Zappa meets, what's the singer of Parliament's name? For some reason I can't think of the funk band Parliament. George Clinton. He's like this powerhouse artsy, but he's got like this kind of swagger to him. He's a really interesting guy. Those guys were great, man. We stayed with them. There was Usurp was supposed to move into this house. We were like a cult. I mean, like we spent all of our time together. We all worked at the same Papa John's. We practiced every day. Like a couple of the guys, Tony and Brandon, the guitar player and the bass player, one of the guitar players, they kind of like would go do their own things. They had like different lives, but me and John and Don and Antonio, and when Mike joined the band, we were just like, all we thought about was the band. It was just like the only thing we cared about was the band. Well, at least that was my perception. They probably felt differently, but you know.
Yeah. I want to come back to that tour, but you were saying kind of when Usurp broke up, you know, you had plans and stuff like that. I know there was like a European tour that was talked about, and a couple of splits with Page 99 and Maracate. Honestly, which I had read was going to be The Shape of Indiana, which was like pretty cool. I don't know if that's true or not.
We had talked about doing an Indiana shaped record. We were about ready to go record. So a lot of the stuff that's on the discography, that Disinformation Fix discography, the stuff that's kind of more like shouty vocals instead of screamy vocals, and the songs are longer because, you know, our average song length was like 15 to 30 seconds. And we started playing kind of longer songs, and we were getting a little more like, we had the keyboards were a lot more a part of the band, and we kind of would groove out on a part a lot longer. But we were supposed to go record for Clark Giles. I can't remember the name of his record label for the life of me, but the singer of The Dream Is Dead. He had a record label, and he paid for us to go record in Nebraska with the singer of Cursive, the indie band Cursive.
Yep.
And then we got into a stupid fight right before, me and the bass player, which is so dumb because he and I were such good friends. We got into a fight, and then it was like an escalating dumb argument, and then we just kind of broke up, and then it was just over. And then like we had been doing it pretty religiously for years at that point, so I think everyone was kind of, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but having a break from it was kind of nice because that's all we did. I mean, like we would make money at Papa John's, and we would go on tour, and we were just starting to finally, like, you know, the tours were were profitable. We could come home and we could buy some new equipment, or we could pocket a little bit of the cash. But back in those days, like, it was almost a pay to play scene, you know, like you drive somewhere, you'd set up. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that we drove all over the country to play for like 14 minutes, you know, a 14-minute set and then leave. But yeah, we had plans, but we were supposed to do a record, and a lot of those songs that were on the discography were the songs that would have been on that record. And that was kind of the new Usurp. The new Usurp was going to be a little bit longer songs, still those kind of wild elements, but not like the grindcore element was kind of like going out of it.
Yeah. I mean, what was that got you guys to transition kind of towards that sound? Because, I mean, obviously some people would probably not like that just because of what y'all sounded like earlier in the days.
Sure.
I know bands progressed, like Daughters progressed into like a screamy band, into kind of like a shouty vocals with like a lot longer, like you were saying, minutes for the song. What kind of led to that transition? Just because was it just because you didn't want to do the same thing over and over and over again?
Well, I think our interest started to change. Like the bass player Tony was like started getting into playing upright bass, and like I remember at the time he really liked that band The Rapture, that album Echoes, and you know, kind of dancey stuff, kind of like Gang of Four type stuff. And then I was obsessed with the band's Love Life from Baltimore that went on to be the band Celebration, and I was obsessed with the VSS, which I was telling my girlfriend, Justin Pearson, one time, like we put together some tracks, and he was like, man, this is cool, but like, it's cool you like VSS and all, but you should just keep playing the music that you like, because you're good at playing you. Like, why are you trying to sound like VSS? Like, so, and I mean, VSS was like life-altering record, that Nervous Circuits record for me. I remember listening to it and going, oh, what the fuck, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And then like, and the next thing I know, I'm in my car delivering pizzas, and I've just listened to that CD for like 5 hours, and I'm like, and then it kind of like, I started getting into this kind of, I guess, post-punk kind of gothy dark stuff. And then Don, the guitar player, he and I were like, we would kind of sit down and just constantly come up with parts and stuff at practice. Everybody, you know, contributed to the band, but we would kind of be the catalyst to get a song started or something.
Yeah.
And then his interest kind of started going that way too. So we were almost kind of like, we started kind of getting this almost like dance punky, post-punk type influence, just by virtue of, you know, our interests just changing as we were kind of growing up. So,
yeah.
'cause, I mean, we were all, I was 19 when I started that band.
Yeah.
26, I think, when it was over. 25, 26 when it was over.
So when you joined Fax Arcana, was that kind of the music you wanted to play? Because, I mean, it's similar, but it's more,
yeah.
Obviously it's not.
You should have seen the faces of people, because our first show, a lot of people came out, because it's like, it's the new Usurp band. And originally Fax Arcana was pretty much Usurp minus a couple guys.
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting John Zepps. He's been in so many bands, oh my god, like Ice Nine and Burn It Down, and like kind of more tough guy or heavier bands. But that guy is just like really amazing. And I was the drummer, and I ended up singing because we just couldn't find a singer. And then one day I was just like, let me try to sing, and I'd never sang. And like, I don't know for anyone who ever had the horror of having to watch me play, I played in my underwear, and I usually would flip my shirt up like Daisy Duke, or I'd play with no shirt. I'd spit water, and I was like a praying, 140-pound praying mantis, and I looked ridiculous. I had like Spock rocker hair, and so when you're playing drums, you're like behind a drum kit, you don't realize how like protected you feel. Like standing there holding a microphone is like a totally different experience. And then we tried to do that band, and it just kind of never really took off. Malady, like the Page 99 guys band Malady, was like, and I was living in Baltimore at the time, and so they were kind of trying to do, I know they were like more like Nirvana-ish, or I don't know, that's what I thought they were trying to do. And it just never, people just wanted Usurp. Like they did not want that band. So and every record we did was just because we were the guys from Usurp. Like it was like we were just the new Usurp band instead of being the band we were trying to be.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of how like Orchid formed into Panthers. You know what I mean? I like Fax Arcana too, and I like Panthers as well. It's just that's why I wanted to ask the question: is that the style of music that you were just kind of moving towards, or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, I mean, like I've got my musical tastes. Like I have two playlists I listen to a lot. One of them is called Sultry Thrusting, and it's just all industrial, post-punk, dark stuff. And then the other one is like indie rock, like happy, bright, cheery indie rock. Those are like the two things I listen to. I mean, my musical tastes like are more expansive than that, but those are like the two that I like 90s hip hop a lot, like specifically 90s hip hop. I know you like 90s hip hop too, so I'm sure I think you are far more versed in it than I am. I have like a decent, like I went and saw Talib Kweli once in Brooklyn, and I was there in pegged skinny jeans, like in Prospect Park, and I did not feel like I was in another world. Like High Tech and Talib Kweli played, and I was like, I got to see this. It's a free show, and I'll go to Brooklyn deep into Brooklyn to see these guys. But yeah, I mean, like, so I wanted to try to play in kind of like a gothy band, but it just didn't work out. I really like that band Blonde Redhead. Also, they're like one of my favorite bands of all time. There's a band, the last band I fell in love with was a band called Choir Boy. I don't know if you've heard them. No, it's very like, Morrissey at his absolute most flamboyant type vocals, but it's very like, they sound like Fleetwood, like a goth Fleetwood Mac or something. I don't know, like, I like that type of stuff, but it's weird, like liking the type of stuff you listen to and this type of stuff you play aren't always the same thing, right?
True. Yeah, definitely.
But I started playing drums again and writing parts, and I mean, I can still tear it up. I for an old dude, I could still tear it up. But I don't know that it's just, man, like one of the saddest things in the world to me is the idea of playing like a bar show and playing cover songs. Like I feel like that's like if there is a hell, that's what I'll be doing there.
Well, I wanted to say, like, the energy of your drumming, I mean, me witnessing it live was, I mean, the electricity of you playing drums. Like, I always talk about, people are super technical at drums, and, like, you were super, super good, but the electricity that you gave in a live performance. I've seen a ton of bands. I mean, I told you I started going to shows, religiously kind of in '87. I went to a show before that, but I've never seen a drummer like with the energy that you had, and kind of it brought more to the live performance of Usurp. You know what I mean?
It was when we play. I don't know if you ever see a video. They all faced me. And I know that hardcore bands often wouldn't face the audience. That's not a big deal. But they faced me because the songs were so, like, the changes were so abrupt in the parts that, like, I was kind of doing like a conductor. Like, they'd be, like, looking at me, and I'd be like, and, like, trying to. And I mean, I was very I mean, I've been very performative my whole life, but I was very, very performative in that band. We tried to do, like, pranks, and, like, we played that Wilkes-Barre Fest, and we threw 2 bags of flour, and it was like, I didn't know that $1.98 could do as much harm as 2 bags of flour did at that fest. But you see a bunch of kids with black hair and black clothes. It's raining outside. People have damp shirts. Flour does not feel good when it goes in your eyes. Flour ruins the equipment, including your own equipment. It was just a bunch of black kids with black hair in the bathroom screaming with their eyes completely red. Like, we destroyed our equipment. They messed the PA up and stuff for the fest. But I mean, I was talking about this with my girlfriend this morning. I mean, like, when I would play, I would start at 100 and I would end at 0 every show. Like, that show that you filmed, I remember laying on the ground like the friggin' T-800, like right as he teleports, and there's like the smoke coming off him because it was so cold. It was so cold. I just had steam coming off my body.
Yeah, that weekend was extremely cold. One of the greatest fests that I've ever seen. I mean,
great.
Pete from Sinaloa did a bunch of great fests, Tin Can Full of Dream Fest up here as well. Just great fest. But that fest in New Bedford was very special. Both days. And I was, like I said, I was kind of bummed that I I didn't bring my camera the first day just out of laziness and stuff like that. But then I remembered to bring it the second day, and you know, I'm thrilled that I didn't get every band, because back then, you might know, with a camcorder, you know, pick your poison was a camcorder. The battery would always be
Right.
dying, and I'd have to look for you know, I'm looking for a socket to plug my thing in, and if they didn't have it, then I'd have to cut short. Either I wouldn't get a band, or I'd only get, like, you know, a couple songs, or you know. So I did the best I could on that day.
I mean, I have a tub full of VHS tapes of us playing shows that need to be given to someone like Antonio, who would actually utilize. I think Don probably has some also. Don was able to. We made it. I think it's on YouTube. There's a Pick Your Poison tour video of us, and it's much longer. It's a lot of me just harassing people wearing a silver alien mask and a cowboy hat with a mask. But I mean, we were kind of in our own little world. Jerome's Dream guys, we did a split with them, like a little split 5-inch, I think. Maybe it was a 7-inch. I can't remember. Was it a 5-inch? No, they did a 5-inch with, who did they do a 5-inch with? Song of Zarathustra or whatever on Witching Hour. They did it. Yeah, we didn't do a 5-inch with them.
Yeah.
I think of a different record. But we met those guys and we got along really well. I saw Eric a few times. He lived in New York. He was like a sneaker designer, and I was still trying to find my way doing music stuff, being a sellout. And I saw him I haven't seen Jeff I'm going to see him this next weekend. I'm going to go up and see Alex, who plays in Horsewhip, my buddy. He's from Indiana. He used to come to my house when he was 17 years old. We lived in a dentist's office, and we would do shows. And he was in a few bands back then. He was in this band called Illithid, I remember, that was kind of like a punk band. But that kid is the drummer of Horsewhip. It's like one of the most crazy good drummers. I'm not a technical guy. I'm a creative guy, but he is like a machine gun. Like just. And always was. Even when he was in high school, he was that good.
Yeah, Horsewhip is great. I mean, so refreshing to see, you know, people our age doing stuff like that too. You know, talk about Jerome's Dream and Horsewhip, and you're seeing things pop up more and more with older people that were in the scene that are coming back, either during reunions or just like starting bands like Horsewhip and stuff like that. Jeff is a great guy. And I love Horsewhip. I don't think they've ever come up to Boston yet, but once they do, I'll definitely be there. Like you said, Jerome's Dream, you're going to see them. I'm going to see them June 3rd in Boston, so I'm pretty pumped for that as well.
That's so cool that they got back together. I always thought that band was really special. I mean, it was a funny tour. Like, Race Bannon would play a longer set, and Jerome's Dream played like 10-minute set, and we'd play like a 14-minute set, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm just like, how ridiculous is this? We're going through all this trouble, and we're screaming into Jeff back then didn't even use a microphone. He just would scream so loud that he didn't have a microphone. But it's funny when you look back by most people's standards of what they think music would be, and the profitability of music and whatnot. It is a pretty strange corner case world, you know. And it's pretty. I don't know when, like, what happened to hardcore. Like, I don't know when it died or if it died. It seems like there's young people who are interested in it still. But I don't know. Like, I just kind of turned my back on it, even though we weren't like, you know, like I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So like, I've never smoked pot. I didn't drink till I was 27, and I was straight edge by virtue of not doing that stuff anyway. And I was vegetarian because I lived in Kentucky, and my uncle killed my pet pig and fed it to us without telling me, and that grossed me out. So I was just kind of like, I had like the appearance of a hardcore kid, but my motivations were not like the same as a lot of the kids were, you know, back then.
Yeah. Now you being from Kentucky and Indiana, that's two huge college hoop states. Were you into college basketball?
I am the only unathletic person in my family. I was telling a story last night at dinner where my dad is, you know, this macho, is like a metal worker kind of guy, and I am like the greatest disappointment for a son that he could ever, like, I'm his artsy, you know, like I hid Dungeons and Dragons books under my bed, and like I read The Hobbit like 30 times. Like, and he got me a pet rabbit when I was a kid, and he's like, "What do you want to name it?" And I'm like, Sabrina. Not a cool name. Not like Thumper or Hopper. Let's name it Sabrina. Like a beautiful middle-aged woman's name. That's a good name.
Why not?
Right. So no, my cousins are all like super athletes. My dad was really athletic, and I'm the kind of artsy. I'm the oldest grandkid on both sides, and I'm the weirdest grandkid on both sides. So.
I also wanted to ask about, you were saying you kind of set up the tours and did that. Now, I know the splits that y'all did, I mean, Index for Potential Suicide, Hassan I Sabah, Jerome's Dream, Neil Perry, Repsecki. Did you have your hand in all that, just setting up those splits? Because a lot of those splits are, like, so legendary.
I mean, we just kind of said yes all the time, and we were prolific. We were writing. I mean, it was hard to come up with a full side of records. You know, like we'd submit our tracks and it'd be like a minute and 12 seconds. We're like, hey, you know, you could put more stuff on here. And we're like, that's like 5 songs. So, I mean, I was kind of the hustler guy. And Antonio's good at that stuff too. He knew people, but I you know, not to take credit away from the other guys, but I kind of was the person who developed those relationships. And Chris Williams from Witching Hour, we kind of ended up becoming friends. And I mean, he did a lot for us in terms of he did a lot of stuff. Mike from, oh God, I can't even remember the name. Like the Hassan Isaba record, the Just Do It record we did, that was a cool one. And you know, Andrew from Alone Records ended up like being interested in us, and he ended up getting the discography and stuff. But I don't know. I don't even really remember how some of that stuff happened. Most of these people we never met. I met Hassan Isaba once, and the drummer almost, like, I thought he was going to kill me because I spit water on him, and he's spitting water on me, and then it was like pretty aggro for a second. So we played that Wilkes-Barre Fest with those guys, and we played a house show at Alexander T from like Lick Golden Sky. At his house. No, we played with them twice. But some of these bands, like Neil Perry, I just have this memory of them explaining what scrapple was to us at like a Denny's. They're eating this disgusting meat called scrapple. And that was like the only time I think I ever saw those guys. So yeah, we did Page 99. We played a bunch of shows with, but I don't think we never did a record with Page 99. I don't think.
No.
God, I can't even remember all of them.
Well, Neil Perry played that fest up in Massachusetts with you.
That's I think maybe when we went to the Denny's, the one show we played. Oh. Yeah. I don't know, like people would just reach out and they would just say, there was like Viva La Vinyl and stuff back then, like that board, and people would just be like, hey, do you want to do a record? And like we would just always say and like I remember like the big negotiating thing would be like, we want 200 copies of the record, or 100 like, you know, they're going to give us the record, we're going to go sell our own stuff. And that's how you made money back then. And then merch, you know, you didn't make any money. You hardly made any money off the door because you're charging like a couple bucks, and usually the house takes the money for that. So.
Sometimes even free shows back then, a lot of free shows back then.
Some of my favorite, man, one of the best shows we ever played, we pplayed a show in Columbus, Ohio with this band Cobra Kai. And I think like 5 people came.
Really? Wow.
I just remember it was really fun, you know. We played that Wilkes-Barre Fest, and the band Scrotum Grinder, their van broke down. So Marshall asked me and 2 of the other guys from Usurp to learn the Scrotum Grinder. So we played a Scrotum Grinder for one show.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sick. That's sick. I wanted to ask you about the Just Do It 7-inch. Whose idea was the razor blades in the yours?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, as a 45-year-old man looking back on the content, I thought that was really funny and cheeky at the time. But I think the guy who run the label said someone sliced their finger open, and then, of course, like, the theme was very provocative, and it was upsetting to some people. Of course, my 20-year-old self thought that was funny, and who cares? But I mean, we did weirder stuff like that penis record thing that we did.
The main ingredient.
The main ingredient. That record.
Was that your idea as well?
Yeah.
I mean, some nowadays, like the way things are, it would probably be way more controversial. But back then, when I got that 7-inch, it wasn't really even a thought of like what people think because of social media nowadays and what it is now. But back then, it wasn't. You know, it was just
meant to be shocking.
Yeah, it was just for me. It was just a cool 7-inch. I wasn't like delving into it deeply, like you know. I feel like some people would today. And I just wanted to ask about it because on a whole, it's a great 7-inch. And same thing with the Neil.
I see what you did there. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I forgot that even existed. I mean, then you look at like the Jerome's Dream Split, and it's like this vulture with a red circle. You know, like I don't even know. I just remember seeing that in like an encyclopedia or something and thinking it was cool. And Chris Williams said, "Sure." Chris, obviously his tastes, like that kind of combat wounded veteran style, clip art type, whatever his style of art and graphics he did for Witching Hour, he, with the horror theme, was really cool. And I take no credit for any of that. That was all him. He would come up with all those concepts and execute them. And I mean, he made really, really cool stuff. That style, that label, that was like, I think, my favorite label that we worked with, just because we were friends with those guys. I mean, we probably played 100 shows with Race Band.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I think both of us were just kind of like, oh God, we're tired of playing with each other all the time. But there was just like no other, like Indianapolis was kind of like up in your neck of the woods back then. There was a lot of kind of tough guy. And there was weirdly a lot of Christian hardcore bands in the Midwest, like Zayo and stuff. You remember them?
Yep.
And so we just didn't really have anything in common with any of those bands. So Race Band was the closest thing. And Race Band is like, I mean, I feel like they could have gone on to be on a major. Like they weren't just a hardcore band. They were kind of like, they were something else. They sound like a DC Discord band on like methamphetamines or something. Like they were unique, really unique.
Yeah, definitely. So what turned you off with the tough guy hardcore? Was it just because of the tough guys at the shows and kind of that mentality?
I just think it sounds bad. Like the vocals are really funny to me. Like the woo, 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 woo. And then like the gang vocal thing, like it just and then like the the drop tuning and like the like I mean I'm stereotyping it pretty hard, but I remember that type of stuff and just being like using collegiate font for your band, like what, like you're a major university or like Yale or something for your band logo. It's just super weird. And also the idea like, hey, we're gonna be vegetarians, but if you're not one, I'm gonna beat the hell out of you. like don't hurt animals, but we hurt people type vibe. And I know that's not a lot, but like Earth Crisis type craziness. You know?
Yeah, with me, I kind of talked to you about it. I kind of went through phases. I was really into, actually, when I was really young, I was into disco, which is crazy because my mom was a hippie, and I kind of almost like tried to stay away from the hippie rock that she was listening to. So I kind of went to, I'm talking like elementary school. I was like into, Kool and the Gang and Michael Jackson and Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Nice.
And then that turned into pretty much like heavy metal, and then it went to thrash metal and death metal, and then it went to like, the New York City hardcore, Boston hardcore, and then kind of went to, like you were saying, like the Victory style stuff. Up here in New England, there was so many heavy bands that kind of had that style, but were doing a lot of different things that weren't, not cookie cutter-ish Victory style, but just different, heavier sounding stuff that didn't really sound like Earth Crisis or Strife or
sure.
Which
there were bands. I mean, like I mean, like even this band's not like a tough band, but like I shouldn't like Union of Uranus. Like I shouldn't like that band, but that one song that that little guitar intro is like the voice of God. It's so I mean, I don't know how many people. It sounds like there's 1,000 people in that band when that little drum part and the riff comes in. But I mean, like I always felt like we kind of Don from Usurp is here. Synapse is Don, I believe, and then Hassan Isab is here. But for me, like the big influences for hardcore stuff, I love Frail, Reversal of Man. Loved Reversal universal of band. I mean, like, I lived in Orlando at the time, so like I'd go to Jason Whitey Camp's house, and I knew John Willie, Matt, one of the nicest guys, Jeff. I remember, like, my grandmother went out of town when I was in high school, and I have this memory of watching the first episode of South Park with Don from the first episode of South Park ever, with Don from Usurp and Jeff and my buddy Andy Perez, who was like another like Orlando hardcore kid. I just have like all these memories of these guys, and then like Arab on Radar, massive influence, I think, for Don and I. Don's guitar style is like this real abrasive, high pitched. He has his own little weird tuning that he did, and I think we like that. And then when I met Justin Pearson and the Locust guys, it's weird. I don't really like the West Coast hardcore sound. Like, they do that one freaking drum beat. Like, every freaking song, every like Angel Hair song has that one drum beat. I don't know if in California, like when you register to vote or something, you have to do that drum beat in your band. But it's in every friggin' band. And but I thought the Locust was like otherworldly and cool. And I have this memory of we played a show with them, and I was hanging out with Justin, and it was the Jerry Springer episode aired the day we were hanging out. So I was like in a house in Chicago the day that aired, which was super weird. But yeah, like Jerome Stream, I mean, like, those are the bands to me that really stick out, that stand out. They were like inspiring. Puritan,
so good.
Dude, the drummer of Puritan is, I don't know, that guy's from another planet. Like, it was like jazz drumming, like, just, I can't even, if you gave me 1,000 years, I could not. What is that one song of theirs? It's like, dun, dun, it like comes in real heavy. It's on that Officer Down split.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. I forgot all about that. I always think of the reversal Puritan. Was it like a 10-inch? Yeah. That was
I still have that. I have the Officer Down, but man, I remember hearing that Puritan split in maybe like my senior year of high school, and just being like, this is amazing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, we didn't just listen to hardcore, but we just kind of played. So it's weird. Like, some ways I kind of feel like I was like a poser, because I wasn't like just the diehard hardcore kid. Oh yeah. Oh, and the other band, Inhumanity, massive. And then I thought Chris Bickle was like a god, and then he ended up like staying at our house, and I ended up like, professing my love for him, which he kind of just sat there and looked at me. And then I took him to a thrift store, and he bought a sequin pantsuit, women's pantsuit, with like a giraffe drinking water from a lagoon. And then he bought a blonde wig, and then he just like went back to our house and hung out in this apparel like it was like normal. Like, like, just like, this is like a normal thing. Like, he's just wearing like an Andy Warhol wig and like a woman's pantsuit, hanging out at people's houses.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, Blood Brothers too. I thought Blood Brothers were like grown men, and then they showed up at the show we played with them, and they were like 17. I'm like, there's no way these are kids that are making this music, because it sounded almost like they were borrowing from older music, Yeah.
Blood Brothers, so good.
Yeah.
So it was very different too, the way they were doing things. Kind of had, it was almost like the element of, I hate to use the word like sassy, like hardcore, but it was that kind of, I think, brought it to the forefront of those bands, like just piggybacking off of the Blood Brothers. In that era of time, that small 2-3 years that blasted off in the scene.
I still listen to that. What's the name of that album? Crimes?
Oh, Crimes, yeah.
Yeah. Something Peacock or something rhymes with Hideous Car Wreck. There's 2 songs on that album.
Oh, yeah.
That love rhymes with Hideous Car Wreck. Yeah. That's a really good track on there. And I love Discordance Access also. They were weird because they're kind of metal, like they're like, but the really wailing high guitar felt, and his scream is just like his scream, not the growl. Yeah. Sounds like an animal being dismembered or something. It's crazy.
Now, were you ever like? I know you, the tough guy kind of metal chorus music, but were you ever into like Converge, that style of hardcore?
I love that song "No Heroes," but so like the northeastern stuff, like I don't know, like kind of. I mean, again the musicianship in it's amazing, but there's something kind of like I maybe a good way to describe this is I like kind of like the noisy, like I don't like the low end like thick guitars, like I like the high end almost like please stop, like, you know, wailing strange guitars. And so Converges, man, they're so insanely heavy. It's like, I'm sure you've seen those guys. Yeah, Force Fed Glass. So the drummer of Force Fed Glass ended up being in Converge, right?
Yeah, Ben, yeah.
Yeah, Ben. That kid was a monster.
Yeah,
really,
which is
really.
crazy because Force Fed Glass, the drumming in that is so bananas, and I didn't know how good it would transition over to Converge, but I mean he's done an amazing job in Converge, but the drumming I love in Force Fed Glass. It's just so crazy that especially that album they put out, and the last thing that they put out too was,
I can't even
kept going.
Remember the front man's name of that band, but like this is back in the day, like I used to deliver pizzas and I would like call people and I would just like talk on the phone. Like he and I would talk on the phone. Like I think we did a show for them in Lafayette. I mean, part of the success of Usurp was we had this house that was like a dentist's office, and we just started doing shows. And you know, people play Chicago, but then what the hell else do you play around there? There's nothing. You know, there's Columbus, Ohio was like a place that people would play. So we started doing shows in Lafayette, you know, by Purdue University, and you know, any band you could think of that was good at that time rolled through and played. And then who do you think we booked to play those shows every time? So we book our own band to open for them, and then that's how we ended up networking by virtue, you know, of that. That's how we met. That's how we met the Locust. I mean, we already knew the Reversal guys, and like, you know, but my gosh, like, you know, His Hero's Gone. I can't even, you know, even like bands that weren't like Devola, like
yeah, so
those guys are amazing. How we met Antonio and Miles, you know, Miles Carr, who's done like a bunch of my tattoos. He's done a bunch of tattoos on Dawn. That's how we met so many people, was because of that house. I mean, I don't think if we wouldn't have had that house, I don't think that we would have met a fraction of the people. But like, you know, Derek Black from Maracate, he went to high school with my girlfriend at the time back then, or as we lovingly call him Truck. Yes, Book of Dead Names and Song of Zarathustra. Yes, those are Jamie. We were good buddies with those people, and then they were in that band 1919. Some of them, I think, were in 1919 was the name of the band. Yeah. The girl from
Carrie Joe.
What's that?
Carrie Joe.
Yeah, what was the name of that band that was?
She was in Makara.
Makara. That album's really good.
And she went on to do Welcome the Plague Year with what's his name? I forget his name, but I mean that band is amazing. Larry from Joshua Fit for Battle.
Oh, that's right, yeah. But I mean, like, man, I have so many. It's like I'm sitting here and I haven't thought about this. Like I'm thinking of this house show where I saw Damned, like, and it's like Damned was playing like with hardcore bands, but I don't think they were hardcore. They were like crust punk, like hardcore, and they were like much older. Like we played with this. Usurp played with this band in New Mexico called Laughing Dog. I mean, and this guy, like, he would scream and he wouldn't speak if they were on tour, because he didn't want to waste his voice. So he could only whisper to conserve his voice. Yeah, the tour we did with Seisha was huge. I mean, one of my funniest memories from Seisha was, I remember Greg, the drummer, then oh God, Colin, I think was the name of the guitar player, and they were like, yeah, we were in this other band, it's called Interpol, and I was like, ugh, that is the worst name I've ever heard in my life. And they're like, we're really good, we sound like Joy Division. They didn't end up being in the final lineup of it, but they were in the protoplasmic version of Interpol before Interpol was Interpol. So, which is crazy. But yeah, we saw Billy and Jamie, Offminer, Steve. We played what was that band that they did? Hot Cross?
Yeah, Hot Cross.
She's
Yeah,
Hit.
Hot Cross, yeah.
Hot Cross. They did that one show. I don't know. They did a few shows as She's Hit, I think. They did Wilkes Bar Fest. It was, yeah, I think that's like a birthday party reference. But the band birthday party, not like a human birthday party. But yeah, oh man, we played with so many bands. I mean, and it's, you know, I look back and like, I mean, Don, who's here, is one of my best friends. I'll never have a friendship like I had with Don. I knew Don from high school. I lived with him and his family. Don, we moved from Florida to Indiana, from Indiana to Baltimore, Baltimore to New York. And then for a while we were apart, and then Don ended up moving back to Indiana while I was living in Indiana. And it's crazy, man. Like I always say this, you know, for me, the most meaningful thing I can do is make something with someone. I've been very fortunate my whole life that I get to make things, and I've gotten to collaborate. Even this ridiculous board game designer stuff I do these days, I work with people. It's collaboration. But I've not made more things with anyone than I've made with Don Kirkland. He has been my ride or die creative partner more, and he put up with me more than anyone too. The poor son of a gun lived with me for 10 years, and I'm not an easy person to be around. So. He is a genius guy. City of Caterpillar, yeah. Dan, what's his name? Rudnick? Or not City Caterpillar. What's his name? He was in Saw 7 Days of Samsara, or they're from Milwaukee. I don't know. But yeah, we played a show with those guys, and I got pushed into a ceiling fan. One of the blades broke off and like flew into the drum set of the other band that was playing. It's just all those things that you think like they don't seem important, and then someone remembers those weird things and then shares them. And we used to play in Sioux Falls all the time, Sioux Falls, Idaho. That was like or Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Sorry, that was a great place. And this is back when there's not really internet, so like you'd go see hardcore kids, and they'd be like these little weird enclaves, and they'd all have like their own little style that kind of homogeneously, you know, organically grew within their own little circles, instead of now where you go online and everybody kind of looks like everybody because culture is so connected. Like you go out to the West Coast and the Spock Rocker thing, you know,
Yeah.
was out of control. I wore a lot of leopard print back then.
There was that up in the East Coast too, though. There was a little phase of Spock going on up here.
Oh
too.
yeah. I mean, I had that haircut. It's so funny because I wanted to believe that I was like this unique thing that had nothing in common with anyone, and I looked exactly like the world I was living in.
Well, you said you had skinny jeans when you saw Talib Kweli. It kind of reminds me of like, I've always been kind of I was in like a screamo-ish kind of band, but I looked like I was from like a straight edge, like hardcore band, you know what I mean? I was wearing like basketball shorts.
Did you wear the beads?
Oh, I'll show you a picture. I had beads from the top of my neck all the way, like it was probably like 50 necklaces around my like neck. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I was more into like my style was that. So when I would go to screamo shows, I certainly didn't fit in, but nor did I give a shit less if I didn't fit in or not. But I was definitely the person that didn't look like anybody else at, you know, say a Seisha show or you know, World Stream show.
Yeah, I mean, the guys in the band, like Tony was the bass player, was like all-state champion wrestler. His parents like worked at the school. He was kind of like, you know, like a jock. I mean, like he was a jock that liked music. Brandon, who we added in the band later. When we met him, he was in this kind of band that was like kind of like Limp Bizkit called Short Bus, and like I think he wore like a gas mask when he'd play, and they had like a manager, and like they played our bass. We lived in a squat. I mean, Don and I lived in a squat. We lived in a house that was effectively a squat with a bunch of people, and we do shows in this basement that looked like it was like the set of a Saw movie or something. And he played, and then just like we ended up he was really charismatic, and we started talking to him, and he knew nothing about the stuff we were doing, but he ended up, you know, joining the band. And John, I met in Indianapolis. Like, John was that same world that kind of Don and I were living in. He was just the Midwestern one. And we met really I met him because I lived in Indiana for like a year or so before Don ended up moving up. But my childhood friend Dean was the original guitar player of Usurp, and then he ended up quitting and moving, and but he was part of that. And there was a guy named Dustin Reddington that was the original bass player. Lots of crazy stories with this guy. He like bought like professional grade vampire teeth, and he accidentally put them on upside down and like fix it in. So he had like a troll underbite, and he couldn't get. Yeah. So yeah, Tony moved to bass when we met Brandon. Tony was playing guitar, and then Tony moved to bass, and then Mike Dixon we met from living in Lafayette, and then Antonio we met through the States of Seeds and got along really well with him. And so I mean we were we were just like a little gang, and we just did that forever, and it was fun, man. I can't look. We had a van at one point, but we forgot to put oil in it, so it died like the first time we took it out. And so we would just all drive our small cars, like all of us would drive part of the equipment. Just super inefficient. We're just throwing money away so we could play shows, Fireside Bowl and things like that. But we used to, we play every weekend if we could. And if not, then we do the shows at our house. So.
Yeah. So out of all the catalog of Usurp, what's your favorite release that you are most proud of?
I really like the stuff that I think the most brutal, rad stuff we did was the Just Do It stuff. Like those songs are crazy good, I think. And then I really like the unreleased stuff we put on the discography, like Mexadudes and Beard of Remoras and Circuitry of the Wolf and Pathogen Gimmick. There were a couple songs we recorded with Antonio that were just kind of like demo tracks. I think one was called Always Take Advantage of the Free Headlock. And then the other one I think it's called Pathogen Gimmick. Those songs are like otherworldly complicated, like the way they just shift in tone and rhythm and everything. Cause like we had a little bit of everything. Like sometimes we'd have like little melodic parts. Sometimes we'd have like these really obnoxious parts. Sometimes we still kept doing grindcore, and I was never really a good grindcore drummer. Like, I was like kind of doing what I call the cheap beat. But yeah, I mean, I think I like the Just Do It record. Don used to curate all those samples from movies and stuff, like the ones like, how do you say kill? Oh, and then like, and then it comes in, like, it's so perfect. So that one for me, probably, not our first record with Emotion Zero.
The Neil Perry split, my buddy Tony has that cover tattooed on his shin, the whole thing.
Oh wow! This with the kind of combat wounded veteran with the
holding the head. Yeah. I think like my favorite song that Usurp ever did was "The City Is a Grid" with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sample. Yeah. Like that, like you were saying, the melodic part of that, and like it goes super heavy and then kind of goes into that melodic part. That song to me is probably my most favorite Usurp song. That, and I Know a Guy Who Likes Dynamite is another one of my favorites. Just Do It, obviously the song Just Do It is right up there as well.
I barely remember these names because we would just come up. I mean, most of the time it would be like an inside joke, or the main ingredient is an inside joke. That name is an inside joke. My God. And like when we did the discography, we just had to have names. So I was just like making wild stuff up, like carving a Ferrari out of a pumpkin. I'm like, why would there ever be a song called that? But yeah, I mean, that band wouldn't exist. I think back then I had a pretty big head, and I thought I was the Mr. Cool guy. Well, I felt like me and Don were the cool guys, but when I look back, like I 100% like the reason I've never been in a band again like that was because I never played with people as good as those people. They were just as much a part in of making that band what it was. Even like Brandon, like Brandon's favorite band was like Deftones. Like, and he was like playing these kind of, and it's funny when I run, like I just ran a half marathon. I listened to Deftones for the whatever 3 hours it took me to run the thing. So, and it's fun. It's just crazy. Like all that stuff kind of came back together. Don, I knew since high school. So we kind of like, you know, I don't know if Don would agree with this, but we kind of cultivated shared interests as we were growing up. And I think like it was easy. How we would practice was crazy. Like we lived in apartments and we couldn't like set up the drums, and like I would play on a pad and Don would play on like a little 60-watt amp or whatever. And I'd be like, Don, go. And Don would just like do it. And then, you know, we didn't really, it was like me and Don would figure out our parts and the other people would figure out their parts, right? And, but it was Don and I would sit down and we would just come up with all these like wild flailing stuff. But like Don could speak whatever this terrible lack of music language I had at the time. And like I had good ideas, but I could not execute. And Don is like just a very, very good musician. I mean, crazy good guitar player.
Did you save all your releases? Like at your house now, do you have all the splits?
Yeah.
You have you have everything, right?
Yeah.
Did you save like any of the Usurp shirts that y'all brought on tour at all?
I don't. I mean, I have 2 band shirts from back then. I have a VSS shirt, which I was thinking about wearing for this interview, and then my girlfriend's like, and I was like, yeah, that's a little try-hardy. Like, I haven't wore that shirt in like 15 years, so I think putting it on for this would be pretty corny. And then I have a Reversal of Man shirt from before, like from their very first record or whatever. I just kept it. But I don't have any. I have Usurp buttons. I have the button where we were making fun of Daughters because we thought Daughters sounded like us a little bit. So we made a button. We had Miles' car draw it, and it's a urinal with eagle wings, and then it's like our names coming out of it in the like that arc like dog. I don't think anyone ever knew that. We were trying to kind of start crap with them, and just to be, I think Daughters right now, their last 2 albums are like some of my most listened to music, so they're amazing. So apologies to them for trying to be a jerk. And it was so like they had the Jones from Indiana. I'm like, hey, wait, we're from Indiana. They're talking crap about us, you know. We had that shirt with the spine down the back, and it had almost like that kind of the font. I mean, we tried to do stuff to be intentionally annoying. Like we printed our name backwards, so when you look in a mirror, it's the right way. Yeah, you know. But again, we made that chaos is us to make, like, we showed up at that fest with Orchid, and I remember Jay just like, we walked up and Jay just goes, "You're a piece of shit." Like the first thing, and then the irony, chaos is us, and then us, US, Usurp on top of it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't remember how many other shirts. I think we had shirts that had the Neil Perry thing on it. I remember Don had one that just had he had like a button-up shirt that had. Yeah, and that shirt was glow in the dark too. The Chaos is Us shirt was glow in the dark. Yeah. So we used to do tons of screen printing and stuff. But I just have buttons now. Chris Williams made us this weird button that's just like oh no, that's a locust button. That's not our button. I was thinking of this weird locust button where it's just like a penis with a guy with a toothbrush against it, like he's holding it over his shoulder with a toothbrush. But I don't know. I wish I would have kept all that stuff.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the disinformation fix, like a compilation that, like, there's no way, will that ever get repressed or like, will somebody ever, like, take that?
I don't even know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what happened to Andrew from Malone. We just kind of stopped talking. I used to call him every day. I would call him every day on the phone and talk to him for hours when I would deliver pizzas. And, he was a nice guy. He was kind of more like for a punk rock guy, he was more of a businessman. You know, I think he owned like a liquor store. Him and his family owned like a liquor store or something. And I don't know if we signed away like rights. I don't know if we signed paperwork. I mean, I've had some people get a hold of me and say like, hey, Antonio's introduced me, and like some younger guys are like, we'd love to repress this. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the cut? And they're like, well, nothing. And I'm like, no. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of people have made money off of me in my 45 years where I didn't get what I should have got. I'm not just giving away. And also, I would want to make sure that everyone in the band got stuff. Like
yeah,
Tony,
yeah.
Tony, I'm friends with him on Facebook. I've chatted with him. I chatted with him maybe a year ago. Don and I, still talk a little bit. Antonio and I, we didn't talk for years, and we're friends again. John, I don't, and it's, I feel it's one of these things where it's like, man, it's like I'm sitting here and I'm realizing what a piece of crap I am, that I should be making more of an effort with these people, because they're so, I started my board game business with Brian Wyatt from Maracate. He was one of the owners of the publishing house we started. We sold it a few years later, but he helped us start it. So these people are still like in orbit of my life. I mean, Don is my, is family to me. Tony I mean, all these guys, I'll hear from them every once in a while. I went and saw Guns N' Roses with one of the guys a few years ago to a non-sold out show. The kid got sick and he had to leave. But yeah, I don't know. The troubles of being middle-aged, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to come off preachy at all, but like lately in my life, I've had a lot of people that have passed away just on random things. I mean, one of my good friends just died from a diabetic coma, like kind of like a seizure. He had a seizure and ended up dying. He was really young, 43 years old, and just a great soul. And then I had another guy die of cancer that I was friends with, and another guy that I went to high school with that we're locker partners for 4 years. He overdosed. So it's like, I'm not being preachy, but nowadays in my life, I'm trying to connect with people that I was like, not to say this has anything to do with what you're doing, but for me, I was kind of a piece of shit when I was in my 20s, and I was a dick to a lot of my friends, which is kind of like I look back and I'm like, wow, what an asshole I was. And nowadays I'm trying to like, not reach out, but if like I see them, I try to be, more loving towards like all the people that were part of my life that I was like almost like a dick to back in the day, you know what I mean? Just because of people dying so much, you know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, the fact that you do this, that you take, I mean, I'm sure you're not making money off of this. You're taking time to talk to people about things they did a long time ago that are important to them. And I'm very lucky that twice in my life, I got to make money doing things I love. And I remember when I couldn't drum anymore, Don was started doing lighting, and he was really passionate about doing like event lighting, industrial event lighting type stuff. And Don kind of threw me a bone, and I was like a stagehand. I had like no experience, like I show up with like a Swiss Army knife or some shit instead of tools. I don't know what I'm doing. Don and I ended up working at that company for a while, and I was lost, man. I stopped playing music. I remember just having this feeling of like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And it was weird because like even the people I was friends with that were musicians, they kind of stopped hanging out with me. It was almost like, well, you can't really play anymore. You're kind of like, you're not really like, and this was like New York City,
yeah,
whatever, like Lower East Side cool kid club stuff. So I got like, I lost my membership when I blew my shoulder out. But man, I'll never have. And like, I love my life now. I think I said this to you yesterday. It was like, that was the best time of my life other than being a dad,
True.
If you go on my Facebook, there's a picture of my girlfriend's twins and my daughter. And that's the best day of my life.
Yeah.
You know why? Because the kids we went camping. We got rained out the whole time. That day it didn't rain. The river was flooded. They were jumping in the river and swimming, and I just stood in the river, and I was a dad. I caught the kids, helped them, and then just helped them do this. I was just basically like a manual laborer for the kids' fun. But it was like the best day because they were the happiest they could have been, and they were all getting along. Everything was great. But in my younger days, I'll never have experiences like I did with Usurp. That was me. And of course, you don't know that at the time. I didn't know I was living like this amazing, like I said, like I've played when I played in some bands that were on major labels and stuff when I was living in New York, but they were just like, I'd pick up a show here, I'd pick up a show there. And I just remember having this feeling of playing this show in Seattle, and it was in front of 8,000 people. And it was the most people I've ever played in front of. And I was just like, man, this sucks. Like, I was like, I'm playing other people's music. I don't really, like, I would never pick to be in this band. Like, I'm very preoccupied with, like, ticket sales now and, like, you know, how much money I make and what label the bands I'm playing were. And, like, it felt icky.
Yeah.
And then after that tour, I just kind of was like, man. And then I tried to do my own band, and then it just didn't work out. And it's really hard to do a band in New York because, like, practicing and, like, everyone's busy all the time. Like, you have to pay to practice. It's like, you go to practice, you spend like $40 a person to practice, you know?
Yeah.
And so it just never happened. And I've talked about it if Don ever wanted to ever do anything again, I would do it, because I feel like Don and I have a deep connection creatively and as friends. And I mean, he's surpassed me because he's continued to play music and continued to make music. I quit and turned my back on it. But yeah, at some point, I don't know, it's weird. Like, where does that fit in my life, I guess, you know? Right.
Yeah. Especially being a dad too, like you were saying. I mean, I only asked about the disinformation fix just because you can't find it anywhere. There's literally no copies anywhere, especially like the CD. I'm like an old, you know, I'm in my 50s, so I'm still rocking CDs. You know, I stream a ton, but that's what I hold on to is CDs. So, yeah, you can't find it anywhere, not even on Discogs. There's, like, nothing. It's just, like, not there.
I've never made a penny from Spotify. I mean, we have, like, something like 500 or 700 listens a month or something, not like it's big. I don't care, honestly. Like, if ever the other guy, I think the other guys, like, if it helped them out, I would be fine with doing it. I don't need that, but, you know, I'm proud of what we made, and if people, it just blows my mind that anyone would even care, you know? Like,
I think a lot of people
would
care,
even,
honestly.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's very flattering. I mean, when you asked me to do this, I was just kind of like, what, why? Like, you know, like, I've not been relevant in that world. I mean, if I ever even was, I mean, I was no Justin Pearson. We weren't Reversal of Man. We were like a little edge case band. Like, we were passionate.
No.
I don't know what other people's perception of our band was. There's times where it feels like maybe it was kind of important, and then there's other times where I'm kind of like, we were big fish in a little very small pond, you know, or we were big fish in a small pond, right? Like in Indiana and stuff. So you tell me, you're the historian. I mean, I don't know if there's bands that we influenced or whatever, but
I mean, for me, you're in that whatever genre you want to say, because I hate talking about genres, but like, you guys are top 5 in that group of bands in that era. For me, like, you definitely top 5. Like, Usurp was so huge for me, and that's why it was such a thrill to talk to you, and I talked to Antonio a while back too. Just a thrill to see you live, and like, I still listen to Usurp, you know, not every day, but I listen to Usurp at least once a week. And it, for me,
that's crazy.
And all the shows I've seen, by far one of my favorite shows was when y'all played that fest in New Bedford.
That was a good show. I remember that show. We brought that girl to try to get on people's nerves, and it just ended up looking weird. But I don't know why those lights came on in the middle of the set, but.
Yeah, well, they were always worried about people. I don't know what was going on in the background, but the lights had come on a few times in that fest. My only, negative thought with that girl, she didn't really have too many good dance moves. It was kind of just a sway type of thing.
Well, it's kind of hard to dance the music that changes rhythm every 6 seconds, you know? She was a friend of Brandon's, the guitar player. Yeah, that was a good show. Our band broke down on the way home, and we didn't want to pay. We were trying to fit everybody into one hotel room, so we like took the screen out of a window of a hotel room and snuck everyone through, and then we were watching Tim Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter, while we were waiting for the verdict on our van. Yeah. Those were wild days, man. And like I said, it's crazy because like I don't think back to I mean, I do blast beats when in my car when I'm driving. I do blast. I broke the computer in my 2 vehicles ago because I would drum on the dashboard so much that I broke the computer, like a chip in the motor vehicle, so they couldn't replace it. But I don't know. I mean, it's I feel really lucky. I mean, I really do feel lucky that I got to make that anyone even cares about anything I made. I mean, I'm like kind of even in board games, I'm kind of a comedian's comedian. Like I've worked on a lot of games. I've got games that are in the top 100, you know, sellers or whatever. And but I've never had, like, I've done, you know, Kickstarter.
Yep.
I've done 36 Kickstarters, but I've never made $1 million. I made 996,000 on a game, and this is for companies, not just like me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I can't break it, man. I just want to be the cool kid one time, you know. Just let me get up there. But you know, when I stop and I think about it, I have a lot of gratitude. My girlfriend works in games, and we get to travel together and we work from home. We get to give a lot more time to our kids, and so just making stuff is what's important to me. I didn't think I'd be I mean, it makes sense when you look at I'm sure even Don, who's known me the longest, I used to like force Don to try to play role-playing games and shit. And he was like, Don smoked cigarettes and skipped school. He was like a bad kid. He was like a cool kid. I was like the kid that would tell on himself, you know? So, I don't know.
Well, I don't want to hold you up too long.
No, thanks, man.
Saturday. But usually at the end of these discussions, I usually do a rapid fire with everybody. So you ready for some rapid fire?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
First question always, all-time favorite hardcore band from New England?
Jerome Stream.
What was your first real hardcore show you attended? Not like a Battle of the Bands type thing, like a true hardcore show. What was your first one?
Reversal of Man.
That was
Just
your first
show? Yeah.
Wow. That's a great first show. My next question. What was the first show you played live? Like at a real show?
Oh, God. Don and I were in a band called Top 40 UFOs in high school that was like this kind of wannabe indie rock band. And I played in that before he was in it, but I remember playing a show at a coffee shop called The Grind. Yeah, Don just said it. The Grind. Yeah.
That was the first show you played?
Yeah.
Nice. My next question. All-time favorite show you performed at? You personally. Something that meant the most.
Probably that 88 Drummers thing was the coolest thing I did. The best show that I ever played, I mean, that fest that you did, that you have the footage of, was one of them. Wilkes-Barre Fest was one of them, although that throwing the flower stuff kind of messed everything up. But, I mean, man, lots of them. I don't know.
What about is it Munoz Gym? How was that show?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that show. Yeah, I'll say that one. That one was really cool. That was like, when we showed up, we were kind of like, man, this is lame. And then like it ended up being a really neat show, playing in a boxing ring in Bakersfield. But we played in LA the next day, and me and the guitar player were like pink from being sunburned, and we're like in the car driving down. We're like, man, we look good. Look how good we look.
I always ask this because I'm a big movie guy. What was the last movie you watched?
The last what?
Movie you watched.
Oh, I think it was that horrible Knock at the Door M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Oh, you weren't a fan of that one?
I like that premise of it. He always gets me with the pitch, and then the execution isn't good.
Yeah. I always ask this too. What is your favorite horror movie?
Oh man, horror movies are my favorite movies, but I really like you know, the last movie I watched, I was Underwater. Actually, I just remembered that movie, Underwater. Man, like that's so hard. I still think the greatest.
Give me a
Alien, Jaws, Hereditary.
So good.
Midsummer. Those stick out to me. I'm sure I could give a more thoughtful. The Cronenberg Fly.
So good. So it's funny. My daughter watched Hereditary, and I was like hyping it up. I was like, oh, it's so good, oh, blah, blah, blah. And she watched it. She's like, it wasn't that good.
I thought that movie
was like, what?
was amazing.
That's what I said. I was like, you're crazy. She's like, yeah. And then she comes back and she's like, well, my favorite movie is House of a Thousand Corpses. I'm like, oh, my.
Oh, I like that. I think Devil's Rejects is really good.
I do, too. I like that a lot better. I mean, I like the 3/4 of House of a Thousand Corpses, and then, like, once they go down in the well and all that Dr. Satan bullshit happens, I'm like, what did this movie turn into? I know it's like an homage to, like, old school horror movies and stuff like that, but once that happened, I was like, what the hell is this? Like,
yeah.
What am I watching?
Yeah, Don is a big horror movie guy. I never really liked, like, slasher and gore. I like monster movies is what I like.
Yeah. Jaws, when I first saw that way back in the day, my grandmother had an in-ground pool, and I wouldn't go in the deep end because I saw Jaws back then. I was like, no, Jaws is in there. Like, I wouldn't.
We watched it a few years ago with the teenage girls, and they were like, man, this ain't scary. And then it gets to the end when Quint gets eaten, and like I look over at their faces, and they're like,
I'll keep going. My next question, if you've been listening to hip-hop lately, what have you been listening to?
And so I'm not like current. I do like Danny Brown though. Mm. I mean, I just think he's funny. Yeah. I like his voice. I like that. I really hate the mumble rap thing. I just can't hang with it. Yeah. But he doesn't feel like that to me. But I'm sure you probably can give me like 1,000 recommendations. I'm kind of like trapped in amber in the 90s when it comes to that stuff, you know.
Have you heard Danny Brown's podcast?
Mm-mm.
He has a podcast now.
Like, is it good?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It is kind of funny. It's real, like, bare bones, like, podcast. It's not really, crazy, but it's funny.
I like Run the Jewels. I like Run the Jewels also. Mm.
Run the Jewels is great.
Yeah.
Talking about hip-hop, when I watched the Pick Your Poison tour video on YouTube, were you dancing to a Reflection Eternal song? Because it sounds like To Live Kweli. Is that Reflection Eternal in that video? Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, whoa, wait a second. That's funny. And my last question, what are some of your favorite Usurp songs to play live?
So the one song that we played from the early days was the song called Meryl Streep is a Fucking Liar, which is the stupidest name. But that song, the one that says more than meets the eye. Meets the eye. Yeah, that song we played, that song never got old, man. That was always a really, really good song. And I think we played another, Don, was that song called Rock and Roll? Just the one that was, I think, that song we played, and it was another one that it was like 10 seconds long, and it was not really like our other stuff. I really love the songs off of Maybe You Should Kill Yourself, that song I really like. Kill Yourself at McDonald's. What a great name for a song. These are, I feel very childish right now. Live It, Live It. That's the name of the song. Yeah, Don's right. Live It, Live It.
Antonio just joined too. What's up, Antonio?
What's up, my dude?
So, lastly, is there any unreleased songs that you guys are holding on to that will ever see the light of day? Like you said on the video, that was the song that never kind of saw the light of day in that video I posted.
Yeah.
Is there any like Usurp songs in the vault that might come out?
To my knowledge, everything that was on Disinformation Fix was every like scratch track thing that we ever, because like the new songs on that were like the songs that we were planning to do for Clark Giles that I told you about. And then we just ended up, I don't know if those were rehearsal sessions or what those things were, but to my knowledge, no. I mean, we recorded some stuff. We played Dude Fest and we recorded something, and I think those songs aren't on. Don, what's up with? I mean, now I'm like trying to get Don to answer questions from the audience. We wrote some songs to play Dude Fest, and I don't think we ever recorded them. I think it was called A Vile Contamina. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Don, yeah, Don has, he just said the Usurp album he did, Adult Adoption, was made from a lot of the demos. So Don does really good, because Don also would like mix stuff and record stuff all the time. I have like no knowledge of how to do any of that crap, so I never had those access to that stuff. So yeah, Don would be a good person. And we talked about doing another. We talked about doing more stuff, but we never did it. So I think, yeah, if you haven't heard of Vile Contamina, and then Don did Adult Adoption, which was his stuff that he did.
Lastly, I mean, do you have anything that's going on in the future for you? Do you have anything to pitch? Maybe you are working on something musically or anything in general.
We talked about doing this band website, and then we're all old dudes, and most of us have kids, and Don's got like 1 million kids. I don't know, we were writing stuff, and then it just kind of withered on the vine for a little bit. I sent a message to the guys. But I mean, listen, man, I'm down to make some ruckus with some people if they want, but it's weird, man. It's like there's almost a part of me that's like scared to do like scared to be the 45-year-old guy sitting behind a drum set, I still have the original Usurp kit. I've drug it around. It's a leopard print. I don't know if I played really small drum kits, like 18-inch drums. That was my thing. But yeah, like I think COVID and stuff too made it hard. But I mean, guys like Antonio, I know Antonio's doing that fake piss band, and like I know John from Usurp still does stuff. Brian Wyrick, he wasn't in Usurp, but he's a friend of Usurp. He's in 1 million bands. So yeah, I mean, I hope so one day. I'd like to. I miss it. It's it's a piece. Yeah, Don has my Gretsch kit too that I had. It's a thing that I miss that I would like to try to do, even just for fun again. I think I would just want to do a record is what I would want to do. Just record some stuff for a record.
Yeah. Now that probably would be easier to do just because of like Don was saying, logistics of how everybody is kind of spaced out in the United States. That would be a cool idea. I mean, and then like
Don's in Indiana. My kid is in Indiana. Antonio's in Indiana. John is in Chicago. Tony is, I don't think Tony has any appetite for this stuff, and I don't know what Brandon's up to these days. So the majority of us, Mike Dixon is in Kentucky. So I'm sure if we wanted to try to get something, my dream was we just book some time and just go in with no plan, and just spend 2 days in the studio, and that's all we do.
Yeah. Now, do you think it would be more the style of the last Usurp, or would it be back to the basics of like the grindy, screamy-ish style?
I feel like I've moved on from that. Like, I think it'd probably be more like the Vile Contamina stuff that was kind of snotty, like almost like that. I like that stuff that we did. It was like short songs, so it was like real abbreviated like the other Usurp stuff, but it had a little bit more catchier hooks, but it was kind of like snobby, like kind of FU, like almost obnoxiously ridiculous, Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what Brandon is also, Brandon's in Indiana. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we would do. But I mean, I don't know that I'd want to play. I think if I did a blast beat, like my foot would fall off or something, or like my femur would shoot up into my eye and blind me for the rest of my life. I might be able to do one. I have 2 electric kits that I play on, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I have no idea what the people's appetite for anything like this is. So, but I would want to do it just to make music with people that I care about. That would be my goal. Yeah,
I think as a fan, I think a lot of people would love to see it. Maybe just for one time.
It's like a Make-A-Wish Foundation for middle age.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I want to thank you again for taking time out. I didn't mean to take an hour and a half out of your weekend.
I would have talked to you longer if you wanted to, so it's not a big deal. I appreciate. I mean, I'm flattered, and also again, like what you and guys like Antonio, how you guys care and you curate all this stuff. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of effort that's taken up a lot of time and space in your mental hard drive to do that. So that means a lot that you care. Because I mean, this is the type of thing where it's like I made a bunch of stuff and I just kind of walked away from it. You know, I'm not like tending the garden of the Usurp garden anymore. I've kind of just left it for other people to do whatever they want with it. So it means a lot. So thank you for the time. I mean, I'm very flattered. And I've watched you do these. I watched the one, I popped in for a minute and watched the one with Antonio. And I always look at your movie, like when you post on, I like Instagram because to me, it's positive. Like Facebook is toxic, positive.
Yeah.
But I always look at your movies, like when you watch the stuff you're watching or the shows you've gone to. So I think it's really cool that you take the time to share that stuff. That's important. And thank you for including me in that.
No problem. I appreciate those kind words. Really, I do. I mean, it is a juggling act for me. That's why this talk is probably my last one for a while, just because I just need a break from it. I just need a break from it because it's been 2.5 years. I kind of started it when COVID really began, and I was so bored, like sitting in my house. You know, it was work and then taking care of my family and making sure they were safe and stuff like that. So I kind of got an idea from my buddy who was doing it at the time. He was kind of doing low-key, like Instagram Lives. And I know a lot of people from the scene, so, like, I just was like, oh, this is a good idea. And now it's not like I'm not, like, tired of it. It's just, like, it's been my time, and I'm going to take a break from it. I might come back in a year or so or whatever, but I started with a drummer, number one, and I'm ending with a drummer. So it kind of...
That makes it even more meaningful. And it makes sense that you'd want to take a break after talking to me. I'm sure anyone that knows me closely will tell you right now you're my girlfriend the biggest favor because I'm not in there bothering her. So, you know.
No, it's nothing about you at all. It's
no.
like I said,
seriously, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry our paths didn't cross when you're down here. But if you got my number, man, you can hit me up. I seriously super appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I was in Orlando a little bit. I am in around Tampa. Usually my family goes to Venice, which is fairly close to Tampa. So next time I'm in Venice, I'll hit you up for sure.
I'll make you a promise, and I'll keep it. The next time you're down here, I'll drive to you as long as it's within 2.5 hours. I'll drive to you.
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, if I'm in Venice, that's only what 15-minute drive to Tampa. That's not bad.
Yeah. So I'll hang out with you.
Definitely. Travis, I want to thank you again so much, and definitely let's stay in touch. I'll send you some links to some crazy music and some hip hop stuff, and let's stay in touch.
One of our girls is really getting into hip hop, and she likes older stuff, and I'm like, I've got a playlist, but it's kind of like, you know, there's some decent stuff on there, but there's some cookie cutter stuff on there too. So yeah,
I do like a mixtape on Spotify actually that it's the 90s boom bap style, but it's like newer artists now. So it's not the mumble rap, it's not the new bullshitty hip hop stuff that not that I'm knocking the younger people because that's what it is now, you know what I mean? But it's more of that 90s era style, but with all new artists. And I'll send you the link to that. I do one every month. It's all brand new music from that month. So
hook me up. Seriously, I'll check it out.
Definitely. Thank you again, and let's stay in touch, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you later.